Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. If I could ask you to please make sure you grab something to eat, and please take your seats, and we'll get started. Well, thank you, everyone. This is great. It's wonderful to see people not on Zoom, for sure. I want to welcome you toward a more inclusive 21st century water sector. The opportunities for diversity, equity, and engagement. My name is Dave Feldman. I'm privileged to serve as the Director of Water UCI. And a number of people who I'm going to introduce in just a few moments are really responsible for making this event possible. Before I introduce our distinguished speakers, Dr. Morales and Mayor Khan, and before I formally introduce our esteemed panel, a few announcements and housekeeping measures are in order. First, we are planning for our next in-person colloquium for sometime in May, very soon, and it'll be on the theme of climate change and global water conflicts. Where might we be headed? So please look for an announcement soon. We'll have a number of email blasts and other communications on that event. Second, Water UCI has been extremely fortunate to have the benefit of a special events committee. This is comprised of distinguished leaders from a variety of professions throughout the Southland, who since late last year have volunteered their time and their effort to elevate our external public events. They've been instrumental in planning this event, as well as others, and in securing external sponsorship for our entire colloquium series, and many of those results you can see posted here. I want to take this opportunity to ask the members of the events committee to please stand so they can be recognized. Thank you for all your work. Third, I would like to recognize our colloquium sponsors as well as the sponsors of our reception, again posted here. Their investment in Water UCI ensures that we'll continue to provide excellent programs such as this into the foreseeable future. And I also want to make special mention of the reception sponsors. You'll be able to enjoy their product after this event over in the Tiki Bar. I don't think I need to say more about that, other than please stick around after the event. Their generosity, again, is greatly appreciated. And I also am delighted and honored to recognize our leadership board. Again, their pictures are posted and have been circulating on the board behind me. But let's give them a hand. These are people that have contributed to Water UCI for over 2.5 years now. Last but certainly not least, I want to take this opportunity to thank Doug Colby, the Chief Advancement Officer for the School of Social Ecology, the home of Water UCI, for his great work and the great work of his team on publicity, marketing, and various forms of assistance for this event. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Social Ecology team. In the reception following this event, you'll be able to see student posters. These are students that have been working on a number of research and outreach projects for our center, and their work is really astonishing. And they have prepared the wonderful posters that you'll be able to see during the reception. I want to thank our students, and if any of them are here, if you would please stand. And finally, Dr. Shannon Roback, the Associate Director of Water UCI, for all your wonderful work and unmatched organizational skills in overseeing the range of logistics and planning for this event, including her mentorship of our Water UCI Fellows. Shannon, great work. Thanks. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Joseph Morales. Dr. Morales serves as Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships in the Office of Inclusive Excellence at the University of California, Irvine. Dr. Morales helps to build campus capacity to become a national leader and global model of inclusive excellence. Among his duties are monitoring and advancing student success, deepening and expanding UCI's relations with other minority-serving institutions, and advocating for inclusive excellence locally, regionally, and nationally. Dr. Morales is a former UCI Chancellor's Advance Postdoctoral Fellow. Informed by his own experience as a first-generation and low-income student, he was also a founding faculty member of the Cal State Long Beach Unified School District Ethnic Studies Initiative. Starting his educational path at a California community college, Dr. Morales later earned a bachelor's degree at the University of California, Santa Barbara, a master's degree from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in ethnic studies from the University of California, Berkeley. Welcome, Dr. Morales.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. This is an amazing event. It's great to see some folks that I haven't seen some time in person. As was mentioned, I am Joseph Morales. So on behalf of the Office of Inclusive Excellence here at UCI, I would like to welcome you to this special event. Before I offer some preliminary welcome remarks, I wanted to state a land acknowledgement. The Office of Inclusive Excellence at UCI acknowledges our presence on the ancestral and unceded shared land of the Gabrieleños and Juaneño Ashaman Nation, which extends from the Santa Ana River to Aliso Creek and beyond. As a land-grant university, it is vital to acknowledge and make visible UCI's relationship to Native peoples, to recognize the history of the land on which we stand, and to affirm the past, present, and future of the Gabrieleños and Juaneño Ashaman Nation here in this place. We recognize that every member of the UCI community has benefited from the use of this land since the institution's founding in 1965. And we acknowledge that the Gabrieleños and Juaneño Ashaman Nation continue to hold strong physical, spiritual, and cultural ties to this land today. This acknowledgement is a call to action to all members of the UCI community to learn more about the Gabrieleños and Juaneño Ashaman Nation and to learn more about this place where we live, work, and study. Again, welcome to UCI, and thank you so much for being here. This colloquium toward a more inclusive 21st century water sector, opportunities for diversity, equity, and engagement, I think reflects some of the best work being done here at UCI. UCI is not only a member of the Association of American Universities, a collection of the top 66 research-intensive universities in North America, 2 in Canada, 64 in the United States. But as far as I know, it may be the only one of these universities to implement a far-reaching vision, such as is exhibited in the UCI Black Thriving Initiative. UCI is also one of a handful, 4 to be exact, of these same top research universities is also an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution. And UCI is also one of a handful of 3, to be exact, 3 of these top universities that is also an ANAPISI, an Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institution. According to the federal definition, these designations are based on undergraduate enrollment only. But in their implementation here at UCI, we go way beyond that. And we think about this in terms of what a multidimensional, holistic approach means. What does it mean for graduate students? What does it mean for staff? What does it mean for faculty? What does it mean for alumni? What does it mean for our community? I understand the focus of today's event is how do water agencies in the industry in general better promote a more diverse and inclusive workforce that reflects the needs and aspirations of the society it serves? And how do we ensure that the water sector embraces the values and issues faced by underrepresented groups with whom it interacts? These questions and your participation in this colloquium is one of the ways UCI leads and manifests the aspiration to be a diverse, equity-minded, multidimensional, research-intensive university. Here in Orange County, as one of the UC campuses, as one of the top research universities in North America, and as a global model of excellence that's inclusive. Please enjoy yourselves today. I wish you all the best for healthy debate, dialogue, and conversation. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. Wonderful, very inspiring remarks, and a good way to launch our first in-person colloquium on this subject. It now is my great pleasure to introduce and welcome the Honorable Mayor Farah Khan of the City of Irvine. Mayor Khan made history in November of 2020, becoming the 23rd mayor of Irvine. She not only received the highest number of votes for the position of mayor in the city's history, but also shattered glass ceilings as the first woman of color to hold the position and the first Muslim woman to lead a large American city. Mayor Khan grew up in Northern California and began her career in the biotech and innovation industry as a regulatory manager, focusing on streamlining complex products and international research. She and her family moved to Irvine in 2004, where her two sons have had the privilege of attending Irvine School since kindergarten. She and her husband also serve as legacy partners with the Irvine Public School Foundation. Mayor Khan is focused on ensuring that the city of Irvine is a leader throughout Orange County and the state of California when it comes to innovation and technology, maintaining a healthy environment, combating climate change, protecting the health and welfare of Irvine's diverse communities. In her short time as mayor, she's initiated several strategies, leading to Irvine becoming the first city in Orange County to spearhead COVID-19 vaccination clinics in local neighborhoods and senior centers. Thank you for that, indeed. Passed hero pay for frontline grocery workers, created a new committee focused on diversity, inclusion, and equity, and adopted a resolution with strategies to support achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. Mayor Khan, we're delighted to have you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. All right, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the great city of Irvine, and on behalf of my city council colleagues, we hope you're enjoying your time here. You know, today we're talking about water, and Orange County has some of the best water districts. I'm sorry, I'm very partial to Orange County, so I know we have districts from around the state here in Southern California, and I'm sure you guys are amazing, but I would like to highlight the Irvine Ranch Water District, which serves Irvine, and we know that they're wonderful. And you can't say that openly. So we know that water infrastructure and stable funding are always necessary for maintaining current water operations, but I love the topic of today's discussion. Like was mentioned earlier, when I first became mayor, I wanted to establish a committee focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that we were looking at equity and reaching out to minority communities that normally wouldn't want to get a job in government, normally wouldn't want to do business with government, or don't know how to. And we extended that into our Irvine Police Department, making sure that when they were hiring, they put out ads in multiple languages, encouraging diverse opportunities for our community members. So that is something that is very, very important to us. And as we're moving along, you know, one of the things that I highlight to people, especially about IRWDs, the purple pipes, right? Everyone's heard of the purple pipes, the recycled water, and that is so important when we're talking about moving to the next step of innovation, making sure that we're taking care of not only our environment, but our resources. As we know, water is an important factor in all of our lives. We want to make sure that we take care of it, that we are able to use it in efficient ways and recycle it so that we are not running out. And earlier in the month, I delivered the State of the City, which is doing amazing, the 14th largest city in California. And, you know, I have to say that when I wanted to really highlight all the great things that are happening here, I wanted to make sure that people beyond our city heard about it. And I think they have, because in the last few months, we had 2 U.S. secretaries visit Irvine. We had the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Health and Human Services visit. And just last week, I got notice that the Secretary of Transportation wants to come to Irvine in April as well. So, you know, it's important for us to share all our good things out there, because there are cities, there are municipalities, there are water districts that are going to learn from all the best practices and repeat that within their own communities. That's really how we encourage growth and innovation and help each other as we're moving along. So with that, you know, let me just close by giving a special thanks to Professor David Feldman, who leads the Water UCI program, and today's panelists, Victor Grego, Scott Houston, June Kim Lopez, and Marissa Perez Reyes. We appreciate your dedication in speaking about water, and I hope that while you guys are here, please do shop and dine in Irvine. We need your sales tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. All right, one last housekeeping item before I ask the distinguished panel to approach the stage. We have a number of very important guests who represent a variety of organizations within the region. When I call your name, please stand and save your applause to the end. Mayor Carol Moore, Laguna Woods. Director Kay Havens, El Toro Water District. President Kathy Freshley, El Toro Water District. Councilmember Kelly Jennings, Laguna Niguel. Director Pierce Swan, Irvine Ranch Water District. Director John Withers, Irvine Ranch Water District. Director Charles Gibson, Santa Margarita Water District. Director Kelly Rao, Santa Margarita Water District. Or excuse me, Orange County Water District. And did I mention Frank Ure? Frank Ure, who is with Santa Margarita Water District. Commissioner Frank Martinez, Long Beach Water Department. Director Bill Moorhead, Moulton Niguel Water District. And lastly, Director Diane Rivkin, Moulton Niguel Water District. Let's give it up for these folks for all of their support. Thank you. I would now like to invite our distinguished panel to please come up on the stage and help yourself to an Adirondack chair. Did I pronounce that right? Okay, good.
All right. June does that.
All right, so I want to introduce the panelists from my immediate left, your immediate right, all the way to the end. I want to begin with Marissa Perez Reyes, who is a public affairs specialist with Stantec. Welcome, great to have you. Let's see, Victor Grego, president and founder, Water Education for Latino Leaders, or the acronym WELL, W-E-L-L. Scott Houston, the Director of Division 4 with West Basin Municipal Water District. Welcome. And last but not least, June Kim Lopez, General Manager with Moulton Niguel Water District. So you all know the subject today. How do agencies in the industry in general better promote a more diverse and inclusive workforce? And how do we ensure that the water sector embraces the values and issues faced by underrepresented groups? So I want to begin with a broad general question, and I'd like to ask you to limit your answers to 5 minutes. Please describe the work of your organization or yourself in the domains of diversity, equity, engagement, and inclusion in the water sector. Who'd like to begin?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Well, it's great to see everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's just great to see everybody in person, all the smiling faces, a lot of dear friends, new friends I had a chance to meet. So over the years, being an immigrant from South Korea, long before DEI was the thing that we talked about, personally championing these issues both in my personal and professional life, and really doing that by helping people, helping others like myself who often walk into rooms and not feel belonged because you didn't see others like yourself. You felt awkward, and trying to help those who are feeling the same thing over the years. And I think that really also resulted in some of my other pursuits outside of water. I always say surround yourself with very different people, and this is why it's such a privilege for me to serve on boards such as NAACP, Water Education for Latino Leaders, the Korean American Coalition, because I learn from others who have gone before me, so I can pass it down to those who come after me. And in our organization, Molten Lake Water District, some of you may or may not be familiar, we serve 6 cities in South Orange County with water and wastewater. We have an initiative that we started about 6 years ago called Future Leaders of Water, FLOW. I do love acronyms because they're like the sticker for the brain. You remember stuff, and you need it as I get older. And it really is about how do we bring different people. And when I say different people, it's not just about race and gender, but different perspectives and experience. And sometimes people look different, sometimes not. So it's really about what you bring to the table. And how can we take that to create a better future through better leaders? Not to say that leaders today are not doing a good job, but we should always evolve, and we should always get better in everything that we do, from recruitment to how we cultivate leaders within and outside of our organization, how we enable our staff to build this network outside of water so that we are a contributing member of society, not just a utility provider, but a value provider. And by creating these connections with people that we serve, it makes our job so much more interesting than pipes. Because, how are you going to get all these other people interested? We're competing against Google and all these other places. And creating this experience and allowing water to flow, excuse the pun, to flow into every aspect of our community is truly what is enriching. So that's just some example of the personal and the professional aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion for me.
Thank you, Jim. Scott, would you like to go next?
Sure. So first of all, it's really great to be here in person. It's been a long 2 years plus for most of us. So it's really great that we're all starting to get back out into the world again. And I've been a big proponent of that at our water district and in my area of Los Angeles County. The nice thing too, by the way, it's nice to see so many water folks here. So a lot of directors and board members, as well as other staff and electeds in this region. So I appreciate you guys being here. So I serve on the board of the West Basin Municipal Water District. Most of you have probably heard of us, but we are on the west side in the South Bay of Los Angeles County. We serve almost 1 million residents, 17 cities, extremely diverse gamut, if you will. So you have, for example, Palos Verdes and Malibu and Topanga, some west side communities like Culver City, but we also have Inglewood and Carson and Lenox. So we have a broad array of communities that we serve. And one of the things that, well, first of all, we pride ourselves on being a progressive water district. And when I say progressive, I'm not talking about the politics, I'm talking about more about forward thinking. And so the district, even before I was so fortunate to be on our board, it was leading edge, and it still is leading edge. And so I've been on the board for almost 8 years, and I'm proud of our agency, I'm proud of its legacy, I'm proud of our staff. So we actually, every year we get an annual report. We do have a small staff, it's about 50 employees, but we do track it relative to the greater Los Angeles population. And even in our latest statistics, we track very well with all of the ethnic groups, as well as female and male, statistics of the communities that we serve, but also the greater Los Angeles area. So I think that's really important, and our board is extremely diverse. So if if you were to look at the different directors, we come from different backgrounds, we're different ethnicities. We do have just one female at this moment, but the agency, I think, reflects the people we serve. And then myself included, you know, I am one of the few probably openly gay elected officials in water in the state of California. You know, when I was running, I didn't run based on any of those type of factors. I ran because I wanted to do the work and represent my community. But it is one more thing I bring to the table. And I do represent a very diverse western side of LA County, including the city of West Hollywood. So one of the things I think is so important is when you look at diversity, equity, inclusion, is how does the leadership, of course, reflect, you know, the constituents, the people we serve. And when I say leadership, I'm not just talking about, yes, those elected officials and board members, but you're also talking about your senior management and then as it trails down. So I think that's really important. And that is one of the other things. As a matter of fact, when we do that report once a year at our office with our HR staff, and they present to us, and the board can provide some feedback. But I can tell you, it's been a priority during the time I've been on the board, and my colleagues have asked for it as well, is to make sure we are doing everything we can to reach out to those different folks that we don't normally probably reach out to. And I really appreciate what Mayor Kahn said, because that, I kid you not, in our committee meetings, that comes up. You know, can we, you know, yeah, you're reaching out to, you know, the same job boards and this, that, and the other, but then there's the different organizations that, you know, like if it's NSBE and some others, hey, are we reaching out to them? And so our HR staff knows that's a priority for us, as well as just having a very diverse, you know, workforce that represents us, as well as we're looking now, of course, last but not least, is a lot of people retiring. A lot of people are leaving the workforce at this point, and we have to have our succession plan in place. So all that being said, I think this is the perfect time to have this discussion. And I think that each of us definitely brings something to the table to talk about here. And so I really am glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Victor.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Griego. I'm the founder and president of Water Education for Latino Leaders, WELL, as mentioned earlier. I know several people here, so I'm like Scott, excited to see people in person for, it's been a while now for all of us. The organization WELL has been around for about 10 years, and the purpose is to educate local elected officials. And WELL, we believe that anyone is a Latino leader if your constituency are Latinos. And in California, that's probably 98% of elected officials. Let's go up to Shasta County or something, right? So we know that many of our constituents that participate in the WELL programs come from all walks of life. We've got a white farmer in the Central Valley. We've got Asian Americans, Latinos, African Americans, Cubans, Ecuadorians, etc. We don't discriminate against anyone because we know that the future of California is a diverse community. We know that California is only going to be successful if everyone is included. I'm kind of late to the game of water or to the industry. I got into it because my daughter was interested in water. When she was getting ready to graduate from college, I asked her, I said, Mija, what are you going to do with your environmental science degree? Because I wanted to work in the future. And I knew that working with my daughter, I would be working in the future. I was never able to work with my father, and I wanted to work with my father when I was young. So I asked her, and she said water was the future of California. And so I went around the state of California talking to people about water and what was missing. And what I found out was two numbers. Number one, Latinos make up 40% of California. Latinos make up 2% of the water industry. That's a disaster. That doesn't make any sense at all. If Latinos are going to be a powerful voice in Sacramento, which they are, right? You've got the Speaker of the Assembly, the Senate Pro Tem, you've got 3 or 4 constitutional officers who are Latino Spanish surnames, then those individuals need to be prepared. Those individuals need to know about water and energy, because they don't. There's a story I was told about 11 years ago. There was a state senator who asked the question, why do they call it groundwater? Right? A state senator. And just recently, a state assembly member said to me, you know, I carried a water bill, and I don't even know what it was. Right? So we have people in positions of authority and responsibility who are not prepared. That is not good for you and me. So I decided to form this organization. We've been around for 10 years, and I'll tell you a little bit more as we go on. But that's kind of who I am with the organization.
Thank you very much, Victor. Marissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marisa Perez-Reyes. I'm a public affairs specialist at Stantec, working to support the Water Resources and Planning and Management Group. I'm going to speak a little bit more specifically about the projects that I've been involved in. I'm recognizing, as I'm last on the panel here, that I play a slightly different role than the rest of panelists. At Stantec, the Public Affairs Group supports publicly engaged water planning efforts like the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, LA's Safe Clean Water Program, and among many others. Again, I want to tell you a little about my background. I graduated from Cornell University with a degree in environmental engineering. And even as I was among the coursework, I was recognizing that I wanted to do something a little bit different with that engineering background. And I still remember one of the very first classes I felt really energized by was a program that was cross-listed with anthropology. And it was about geopolitical conflict related to water scarcity in the Mediterranean. And it was total out of left field for engineering. And it was at that point I knew it was going to be a little tricky to find my lane. So I had the great fortune of getting connected with the Civic Spark AmeriCorps Fellowship Program, seeing a few heads nodding in recognition. Civic Spark brings in about 100 young professionals every year. It places them in local governments to increase the capacity of those governments to implement climate-forward initiatives, water planning programs, and the like. And so I was placed at the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority over in Riverside, worked directly on the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program, which is a grant that is administered by the Department of Water Resources Integrated Regional Water Management Program. I know that's so many words. I mentioned them all, they'll be relevant in a second. In that effort, the Water Authority partnered with UC Irvine, partnered with a number of nonprofits to conduct an ethnographically informed strength and needs assessment, which was then intended to allocate money related to water planning efforts to best suit the needs of the community of Santa Ana Watershed. So all of that was my very first publicly engaged water planning effort that I was involved in, and so that's why I speak so much about it. But after that, I worked for the Department of Water Resources on the opposite side of that grant. I worked in the financial assistance branch administering the grant. So it gave me kind of the state's perspective of how do we carry out the initiatives that the voters have said they want to have in place. After the Department of Water Resources, I came on board at Stantec about a year ago. Again, the public affairs group that I mentioned before, one of the biggest clients we support is the Department of Water Resources. Again, you're sensing a thread. We work to provide facilitation support services to all of the variety of groundwater subbasins across California. We help them meet the requirements of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So these groundwater sustainability agencies were tasked with developing and then implementing sustainability plans that would bring them into sustainability by 2040 with their groundwater use. So the public affairs team was tasked with providing public affairs facilitation support because SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, I'm going to try to avoid acronyms, requires public engagement and requires groundwater sustainability agencies to consider all beneficial users of groundwater in their subbasins in the management of that water. So I'm going to mention one more program that I'm involved with. It's the Safe Clean Water Program of LA. That one is another publicly funded effort through Measure W, you may recall, was passed several years ago, developed a dedicated source of funding for stormwater investment. And that's another program that's governed by a variety, there are 9 different watershed area steering committees that vote on how they want the funding to be allocated. And that those steering committees are composed of representatives from water agencies, municipalities, and community groups. So those are a handful of the projects I've been involved with. I suppose you could say in a nutshell, the work that I do is, broadly speaking, geared towards the democratization of water resources. And that effort is accomplished through development of more transparent and accountable water planning frameworks. Those frameworks are becoming more accessible to the public and more responsive to their input, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. So I want to thank Water UCI for inviting me today and looking forward to the panel.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Great. So you've all discussed your work in promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity and engagement. So I want to turn to a related question. If your efforts in promoting diversity, equity, and engagement were successful, what would the water sector look like 10 years from now? What would it be doing differently in recruiting, mentoring, leadership development, and interacting with the public? And for good measure, what would a panel on this topic for a future Water UCI colloquium look like? June, why don't we begin with you again?
So if all goes well, if you look around this room, this is a very different kind of an audience when you go to a water conference. And those of you who go to many conferences realize this isn't the typical look of the room. And this is more reflective of today's society. If we did everything right, we would see greater amount of leadership roles in water that are of people of color. In the state of California, there's about 7,000 water providers, all different sizes and shapes. Out of that, you have about 300 system plus that are considered, categorized actually by the state as failing. Another 300 is on the brink of failure. All these systems serve people, communities. But when you look at the demographics of that community and you look at the leadership, those who are the decision makers, you're not seeing the comparability, not just in the way that they look, but again, in their perspective, their backgrounds, and their experience. Because you think that you know what it's like to be someone else, but you don't. Because until you've walked in their shoes and you've been in where they are, you really don't know. So we have to be very conscientious about our own limitation, our own ignorance, and our own bias. And that's why diversity is so important, because you might miss something. So the leadership position will have much more diversity, because who's at the top does matter. I see that councils and board members who are elected by the public are getting more diverse. I think that is wonderful. I look at my colleagues across the industry throughout the state, and it's a struggle out of those 7,000 providers just to name 10 people who are general managers and or CEOs who are people of color, let alone a woman of color. It's a struggle. Just try to do that in your own mind. We shouldn't be in that position if all goes well. And what I would love for us to talk about as panelists in the future is to say, here's the result of our efforts. Here's how we held ourselves accountable. Here's the progress and the evolution we made over the years, because we took action, we took some risks. For those of you that DEI is your life, and I'm not just saying you're living it, but it's your body of work, you know that it's frustrating. I know several of you out there who are champions who've been frustrated, because it's a hard movement to push. So I love to see those of you who I know firsthand have been through those struggles, trying to be that voice, speak for those who are voiceless, and be up here and say, this is the progress we made, and we should really feel good as an industry that we all got behind it, and here's a result that we have to show. And that the communities are no longer deprived of safe, reliable water, that we do not have over 1 million Californians without access to safe water. That's the kind of story I love for us to tell. It's been decades that we struggle with this, and we just cannot struggle more for additional decades. A sense of urgency and the immediacy of the situation is, I hope, that's something that we can all get behind, because it involves everyone. DEI isn't just the work of communities and people of color, or of certain genders, or certain preference, or certain religion. It is every single one's responsibility and obligation to make this happen. So that's the kind of testimony that I love for us to tell in the future.
Thank you.
Very
Scott?
good. No, thank you. I think June set it off very well. I think if we were going to look at the water community 10 years from now, what it would need to do is to literally reflect the communities we all serve, reflect what it is now, the diversity of the state of California, and what we will see that to be even more so in 10 years. So, you know, I'm fortunate. I happen to live in an area that it runs the gamut. It's very diverse. That's just my natural area. But we all know that other spaces don't have those same opportunities. So I think it's good that more people are stepping up to the plate and getting supported and having opportunities if they're going to run for office, if they're going to get a chance to serve in that way, which also, of course, sets the tone on who they hire as general managers. And that also sets the tone for policy and, you know, the management of an organization, and really saying we embrace diversity and we want to bring in, you know, different voices and different, you know, types of folks to our workforce. And one of the things, though, so that's on the one side. We're talking about the management level, you know, the executive level. But as I was saying earlier, our big challenge today, of course, is the workforce is changing, and we have to, in the public sector, try and attract these folks who are coming out of school now. And why would I want to work for a public agency? Why would I want to work for a water district? Why would I want to work for the city or in a public works department versus, you know, we've got SpaceX where I live. We've got, you know, Boeing and Raytheon and all these different companies that they can offer things that some of us just can't in the same way. So even right now, we're rethinking as we start to bring people back in the office, okay, what is the new realm going to look like? How are we going to do the hybrid thing going forward? That's a discussion right now with our board and our general manager. But then it's like, in the way I think of this, because, you know, I came out of the public relations world, so, you know, we always look at things as, is it sexy? Is it glamorous, right? And I would say the perception of the water utilities is probably not very glamorous or sexy to people who are not involved in it. Now, on the flip side, you and I all know it's a great industry. I think it's so exciting. There's so much opportunity. And I like to always talk about it when I'm out in my communities, and I'm saying not just for the engineers, but if you're in finance, if you're in communications, you know, if you're in different other job categories, as well as if you're going to look at a 2-year program or a trade or what have you, we need operators. The point being, when the private sector has a downturn, or some of these companies start laying people off or going out of business and some of that other stuff goes away, at the same time, we are essential services and industries. And we're going to have stable jobs. We're going to have, hopefully, stable income coming into our organizations. We have got great benefits. But I think one of our challenges will be, how do we continue to entice, you know, the younger generations to come into this industry and start filling those gaps? And of course, this all goes right back into, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, saying, hey, this is a safe place to work. It's a great place to work. We welcome you. We want your perspective. And in that, when folks come from different walks of life who had the opportunity to get trained, whether it's college or some other degree program or trade program, but then they come and be a part of that team, and they represent the people they serve. It all works together very well. So I think that if I say, again, 10 years from now, when I go to an Aqua conference or some of those other conferences, I would really like to see a lot more colors of the rainbow there, and no one to feel at all uncomfortable in that environment.
Great, thank you. Victor?
Well, I think the second part of your question was, what would this panel look like?
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that the panel looks more like Marissa. I would hope that it's young. I would hope that it was women. When I met the mayor, I gave her a thumbs up. A quick story, I'm on a board, about 45 people, and the chair never chairs the meetings. He always picks someone to chair the meeting. And one day I said to him, I said, Denny, why do you always pick women? In front of everyone, right? Just kind of threw it out there. And he goes, Victor, because women know how to get things done. He says, see, us men, we talk and we position and we do this or that, you know. So I think we need more women. I think we need more young people. I think that's going to be a big factor. The other thing is we have to be prepared. There's two types of leadership. There's two types of representation, descriptive and subject. And I notice in the work that I do, many people get into public office because we need a woman, we need Latino, we need a black guy, we need this. You know, we check the boxes, right? Well, that's only half the game, right? The other game is, are they prepared? Do they have the qualifications? Do they have the desire to learn? Are they curious? It's one thing to represent a community. That's incredibly important. You need to have that political voice, no doubt about it. But once that voice is present at the table, are they prepared to ask the right questions, to get the right answers, to make the right decisions for all constituents? So preparation and education is key in what we're trying to do. The third thing I'd just like to mention on public policy has three elements. It has the science, it has place, and it has time. So the science, we need our professionals. We need our academics, we need the professionals, but we also need the voice from the person who's lived in that community for 15, 20, 25 years. Because they've seen people come and go, they've seen traffic patterns, they've seen industry. So you need that time, people who've been there for many, many years. And then you need the person who just moved in, right, and that place. Why did they move there? What do they find attractive? What's going to keep them there, right? So public policy needs that kind of public participation that Marissa's so involved with, and that's why we need more of it. So I believe that in the future, if we do our work right, and boy, do we have to. Boy, do we have to. Look at the crisis on energy. Look at the crisis on water. Our state, as great as we think we are in trouble. We are in trouble. So we will have to be prepared. Sorry.
Your turn.
I know.
It's all on you. It's all on your
yeah,
shoulders.
She's going to lift us up now.
All set up for you.
No, my fellow panelists have done a wonderful job of answering this question, and I won't be able to speak as much to the staffing level, although I would say if we want to get to the future that my colleagues have described, we need to support young professionals more. We need to provide better on-ramps for them to enter these spaces, and we need to learn how to acknowledge and embrace the diverse sets of experiences that they bring with them. If I'm being honest, a lot of the times that I'm afforded a lot of advantage because I have an environmental engineering degree and I enter these water spaces. However, some of the most valuable voices you will find to this topic of increasing diversity and equity in outcomes related to water planning, they're not engineers. You know, one of my, the co-fellow I was working with at Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority had an English major and had a minor in environmental studies, but we need to learn how to see experience and acknowledge it for what it is, even when it doesn't look like the experience that we're used to rewarding in a job. So it's not that people don't want to work for water, it's that maybe they come with a different set of experiences that's not being acknowledged. So in addition to that, I would say I can't tell you how valuable mentorship has been for my experience. Even just being there for your colleagues and even people outside, it's so important to provide resources and train up younger staff. And then I did want to speak really briefly. I think we'll have another question about related to public, but I think if our efforts in promoting diversity, equity, and engagement are successful, you'll find that there are easier pathways for people to converse across the spaces. So you would have nonprofits and community-based organizations who have the resources to be able to engage and advocate for themselves in those spaces where, over the years, historically, there's been a huge gap between those receiving services and the ones providing them. And if we're successful in this next 10-year period, we'll see hopefully more resources being allocated to better bridge that communication gap. And you would have people who are conversant in the language of the community, those community-based organizations who know how to meet people where they are, who can also then talk to the water agencies and bring that information back and bring that technical expertise back to the water agencies and say, these are the needs of the community that has expressed to us, and this is what we think we might be able to do about it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Well, indeed, we've talked about embracing diversity, equity, and engagement within the water sector. And now I'd like to turn to outside the water sector. How does your work help us ensure that diversity, equity, and engagement with external stakeholders is promoted? In short, how does your work ensure water justice? June?
But you can't do it alone. We're all connected at some point or another. So that's why it's so important to reach out beyond the water sector, to talk to people that have nothing to do with water. And what you'll find is that you actually have a lot in common. I work with homeless sector, building sector, real estate, academic institutions, and it's really great to have all these different experiences come together. 8 years ago, our agency started a nonprofit called California Data Collaborative. It was to bring big data solutions to water challenges. We got to work with Netflix, Amazon, we worked with Microsoft, we worked with people that we would never even talk to. We worked with other countries like Denmark because the language of technology and innovation brought us together. That was really that moment where we said there is so much that we have in common, that we have to work together. So because we go outside of the water lane and seek partners everywhere all the time, and sometimes people kind of laugh at us or maybe laugh at me, but how will you know until you surround yourself? Because you don't know what you don't know. And that's a really important part because we need their help, whether it's organized labor, trades, academic institution, hospitality. You know, when I look outside here too, there's different generation. There are families here. There's Mo and his daughter Melissa. There's Ed and his son Gilberto. And there's Efren and his daughter Amber. This is important. And they are not in water. But we can't do our job in a vacuum. So by reaching out to these different sectors, to different generation, that's how we bring the best and the brightest into our field and into our organization. I spend a lot of time just going to a lot of different things because it's how you meet people, putting yourself out there. When UCI said there's doing water, raise my hand, I'm part of it because I know UC Irvine and a lot of these campuses have really smart students that get poached early. I didn't even realize that smart students get drafted and recruited October before they graduate. Obviously, I was not one of those students, that's why I didn't know that. So I'm like, we can't wait until April and May to go to these campuses. Like, I gotta go inside deep and get to know everybody and take these opportunities to talk about water so I can grab all these talents and make it exciting. And yeah, I name drop, I say Amazon, I say Netflix, just so that they get interested. If you're a gamer, coder, bartender, artist, I don't care who you are. There's a place for you in water. And then now you kind of get them interested. And then bringing in all these different people makes our industry better because ultimately our job is to serve our community. It's not about ourselves, it's not about control, it's not about governance, it's not about me and the ego. By projecting out and seeing what we can do for others, that's how we've been able to attract the best talent. You know, for a while, and I still think we are, maybe minus me, we have the youngest executive management staff in the industry in California, if not beyond. You give them the space, the opportunity, and the safety to be themselves. And I find that a lot of my generation look at Marissa's generation and say, well, they don't understand their work ethic, and they just, But what I realize is we're actually getting better as human beings. They have a sense of purpose. You know, when I was growing up, it was like, you know, make money, go to school, do this. There's like these achievements rather than purpose. And I see the next generation being much more compassionate and much more tolerant and accepting. So I would say bringing all that into the water industry, that's why bringing it and putting yourself out there and the work that we have done in these other spaces that felt risky at times have paid off in dividends. And now it's creating a movement. And we hope that that just continues to grow. And I really appreciate the work that Professor Feldman and UC Irvine has done to bring this issue to light and focusing on water, because they can focus on a lot of different stuff, but giving us this platform and the opportunity will be a tremendous service to our communities.
Well, I think external stakeholders beyond our own organizations and our own silos are extremely important. And so on the one hand, I can speak to it, of course, as an elected person, because that's one whole avenue. But one of the things I always think about, and I talk about this at West Basin all the time, is we are a part of the community. So the water district is a part of the community, right? You've got the city councils, you've got those city governments, you've got the county government, you've got school districts, and you've got the water district. And so one is, we are a part of the fabric of the community. And it's very incumbent upon us to be very visible and present within our region and the people we serve. And so whether you're a board member, whether you're the general manager, whether you're another staff person of some capacity, it's real important that we are out there showing up. So if it's at the Chamber of Commerce events or different other types of events in our communities, whether it's something, if it's a sponsorship that we're doing and we have a presence, or just, being at a meeting. So as a matter of fact, I was at a meeting right before this, and one of the reasons I was just a hair late, not that you guys saw that, but, we have a group of mostly electeds, but a number of other folks who work in the aerospace industry that we're focused on the LA Air Force Base, because we know that is a major economic driver in the city of El Segundo and those surrounding communities. And so we, usually it's once a month or every 2 months. And by the way, this morning was the first in-person meeting we've all had in 2 years. So that was just amazing for us to be together. But my point is when you get in a room just like this one, where you have folks from different sectors, I think the water community, we need to be there. And by the way, I walked in, I made some really good connections, because there was one of the school principals, and they've got a wonderful robotics program there. And I wanted to I've been trying to work to build that relationship with that school district, because, when we work with Metropolitan on our Solar Cup program or some of the other things that we get to do, and again, trying to entice these young people into water as one of those career opportunities. So back to this, I think, one, it's so important that the water community, we have to be out in the community, not just in our office or down at the plant, and that's all we do. Yes, we're vital to making things function, but we have to be out there representing. And so along those lines, one of the things I really push hard on at West Basin, and of course the pandemic slowed that down, is I actually really like it when our younger staff get to go to conferences. If we have extra ability to send them to a conference, even just to attend, let alone if they get to speak or be on a panel, I encourage that. Because I want them, when I was young and got out of college and I worked in, some of my first jobs are more on the corporate side, and junior staff never gets the opportunities. It's always the senior staff, it's always the, everybody else, they get to go do all this stuff, and you don't even know it exists. And then when you get to a little higher up on the food chain, then you understand it. So what I try and do in my life is to make sure that I'm at least allowing or giving folks opportunities that I didn't have. Even I didn't even know I didn't have those opportunities, but I'm saying, it's detrimental, I think, to their growth. And so I try to make sure that that's a big part of what I advocate for as a board member, and then in other circles in my life, is how do we, bring people into the fold, give them opportunities, and help them, as well as, lastly, of course, I think we all know this, you probably learn more by failing than the first time you succeed. And so, you have to give people that chance, and you have to give them the tools and resources, but know that, they might mess it up this first time or second time, and that can be acceptable, because those are some of the best lessons you'll ever learn. So again, it's part of just getting out with those different external audiences and stakeholders. That's tremendously important for those of us in the water sector.
Thank you. Victor? Well, I think the work that WELL does is that, Professor Feldman, because we train and educate local elected officials, primarily city council members and school boards, We've expanded to water district directors, which makes sense, but we initially didn't go to water directors because we figured, well, they already knew what they needed to do. Well, we soon found out that's not the case. Many of them, as I said earlier, get on for other reasons besides having the substantive experience. So I believe, Professor, that the work that WELL is doing is that we're outside the traditional realm of water. We deal with city council members, supervisors, school board members, so that they can understand water policy in California. So that's number one. Number two, we've recently been asked by the California Latino Caucus to educate their members on water policy, because they're saying that there's so much legislation. As a matter of fact, Anatole has been part of those briefings. Jose Solorio, who I see walking around, he's been part of those briefings. June has. And so we're having conversations with Latino legislators in Sacramento on California water policy. And one of the members made an interesting request of us. He says, tell me how water is integrated with housing, transportation, healthcare, because we have 35 legislative committees in Sacramento. I don't want to have to understand water on 35 silos. I want to understand, how do I integrate water policy on all aspects of legislation that comes towards us in Sacramento. The third thing I'd share is WAL has been approached by AARP. And AARP is taking a serious look at their role with water. And so we're going to have a 2-day water symposium for the 7 Colorado River states that WAL is going to be coordinating a 2-day water symposium. So that's an example of going outside the water world to make sure that we have voices understanding California water challenges.
Thank you. Marissa.
Thanks, Victor. So when I think about engaging a community and a variety of stakeholders or beneficial users, however you describe people outside of the water space, I think it's important to know that people can tell when you don't really plan on making any changes based on what you hear. So I think community engagement without a clear goal and understanding of how you're going to use the feedback that you hear is just fraught to begin with. So before you think about even improving engagement, you need to understand and make a commitment to actually do something with that knowledge. And I think in terms of helping people feel like their input is valued, it needs to be visible to them how you're going to use that input that you hear. So creating more transparent and accessible pathways for feedback is so important when you're thinking about making water planning more accessible to the public. So in our work, community engagement it's really daunting for those who haven't done it before, and especially challenging when, lost my place, apologies. I was going to say, it's easy to incorporate the community's perspective when it's either required or when it's easy. And as a facilitator and in the work that we do at Stantec, we think about those real challenging situations where community engagement isn't the easy thing to do, or it's not required in some cases. And in that case, we bring this perspective that says we know that community engagement is better in the long run. If you start with the community in mind when you're planning, there are just so many benefits down the road. So that's really where that piece kicks in at the end. So there's not much more to say that hasn't already been said, I've got to say.
Thank you very much. So I could continue asking questions, but we have an audience that is extremely well informed and I know very passionate on these issues. So I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. I believe we have a couple of microphones that we're going to circulate. Doug, is that correct? We do. So if you would like to raise a question with any or all of our panelists, please raise your hand. We'll come around. And then if you would please state your name and your affiliation. Yes?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Preeti Guman. I am with the LA County Sanitation Districts, and I'm really happy that we're having this session. Just a little bit about my background. I went to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and University of California at Berkeley. I'm a civil engineer. Those are the top 2 civil engineering schools in the country. I graduated 25 years ago, and I was promised equal opportunity. I was promised the community needed people like me. I was promised, we need soft skills and leadership. And when I look around the country, we literally have 5 general managers at water organizations that look like me. Now, when I went to Berkeley, we had 50% women graduate. So I'm wondering where all these women went. Now, we know where they went. 70% of women for the last 30 years who earn engineering degrees leave. Bachelor's degrees leave the field. And we know why they leave. They leave because of work culture, specifically workplace incivility, meaning people who actively try to make them fail and who harass them. Pew Research reports that 80% of women in male-dominated fields are harassed at work. And we also know they leave because of workplace inflexibility. So I think with COVID, we have a huge opportunity to change these things. If we really want change. I've sat in these rooms for 30 years, hearing the same stuff. So I think some ideas I have are leadership accelerators. Because why would a young person join your organization if their leadership doesn't look like them? We've recently had several women of color leave, women engineers leave, because leadership doesn't look like them. Now, Jacobs Engineering just came out with a new strategic plan. 50% of executive leadership is female, 3 of 8 board members is female, and every senior manager has performance metrics. If we're going to compete in the public sector, we need to meet those metrics today. Yet, there are no, June is an exception. So we need to think about when people come in our organizations, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for leadership that looks like them. They're looking for diversity of thought. So, we all have DE&I plans, but I'll admit, I think they're lipstick on a pig. I don't think we're going to get to where we want to get until the C-suite and the executive management wants it and shows that they want it. So that's my comment, and I've worked in the industry a long time. They can't spell my name. They can't pronounce my name. Really, is a young person gonna, I don't need little kids to follow my path. We need to retain the people who are already here and promote them into leadership roles because they're ready, but they're not in the old boys club.
And I want to
Thank you
respond
for
to
sharing.
that.
Please respond. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of important points that you made. So before I got into water, I was a police officer. And in terms of the harassment, people wanting you to fail, setting you up for failure, telling you can't do something, holding you back, that was the first time I felt it in law enforcement. And then I come into water, another very male-dominated venue, so I felt that as well. So it's not an uncommon thing. We sit here, we talk about this, everything seems good right now with me, but as Victor always says, June, you don't tell enough of the story, and that is the story. What I encourage people of all ages and all walks of life is, I say this before and I say it now, you just gotta outlive everybody. You gotta outlast them. I'm not going away. There's multiple times in my career, people thought, there's no way she's gonna make it. Yeah, her career's over. I thought that too myself. But it was, I think, just because I'm stubborn and ignorant sometimes that I just didn't realize, well, I'll just go somewhere else. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna stick it out. I'm gonna stick it out. And I think that's part of the resiliency that we all have. And I think for those who are not experiencing that story, when you see someone next to you experience it, we have an obligation to do and say something. I didn't really realize this until the whole Asian hate thing happened. Now, I have been discriminated for being a woman, for being Asian, Korean, awkward, fat, all throughout my life, for all these different reasons. But I never quite understood that level of discrimination where someone didn't want to sit next to me, where someone would say foul things to my mother, where I had to worry about my mom walking down the street. Then I understood. So I've always been a vocal person in, speaking and defending those, but it just created a stronger resolve. And I think that's part of the DEI action that we could do, is that we all can do a part. And I like the accountability. I like the goal setting. It may sound very of a stretch goal, but at least you can measure and hold yourself accountable. So set some goals so that you can actually check yourself. And without these kinds of outcomes that you have, right, it is all talk. And we've been talking about this a long time. Nimala knows, she and I talk all the time from Department of Water Resources. We talk about this all the time. Now let's talk about actions. And I think that's a great follow-up panel, Dave, is to say, okay, let's take an inventory of what we have and how far have we come. And first we got to get that baseline data too, because we don't even have that.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Can I
That's
say
great.
something really quick?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your candor. I mean, that took a lot for you to get up and express that to us. But, and June already said it, but I certainly want folks to not think we're just, talking hypotheticals and talking, just, oh yeah, let's check some boxes and we're all hitting the DEI numbers and all that. Because quite frankly, I don't think even 2-3 years ago, we were really talking much about DEI. What happened in pandemic and with the Black Lives Movement and all the unrest in our country has really sparked this to the forefront, number one. I think that we were, in some ways, different organizations were making some headway, some traction, but we had setbacks, obviously in the politics of our country, but then turn around the pandemic. And we all got, put in our homes and our silos, and we couldn't be out doing what we need to do, which was going to keep things moving. Now, one thing about it is the world's changing around us as we speak, and that's one thing, I'll be honest, I love living in California, and I love living in Los Angeles County because it's extremely diverse. It's just, you're used to it. I grew up all over the United States. My dad was in construction, so I've lived in the north, the south, the east, the west, and, obviously, and the Midwest, in the center of the country. So I'm used to a lot of different types of groups, but I've lived where it's very white, it's more black, it's more Latino. Then I came out here, and it's everything. So I think we live in more of a bubble, but yet, as you mentioned, we still have a lot of challenges. And so I just want to say, I don't want anyone to think that when we have these discussions, because sometimes that might be true for some people, but there are those of us who actually believe that we need to be inclusive. The kids, they're growing up with all different cultures around them. That's the nature of this country. That's the nature of the world today. It's a global society. And, people are taught hate and intolerance, right? And we've all experienced it in some way, shape, or form. But I think you're right, and others I'm sure have the same thought, is that, we need to, if you get in a position of leadership, it's on you to take responsibility and give back and to make sure you're identifying different ways to, break down those barriers, break down those roles, give people opportunities, and stick with it, right? You don't just do it for a little while and then it kind of fades away. So anyway, I just had to express it because I don't like to hear that that's how it is, but we all know that's reality. That's reality. But thank God things are changing in this country. But we do have a lot of work to do. We still do have a lot of work.
Victor, Marissa?
No, other question.
Another question? I think we saw a hand up. Yes.
Thank you, Anatol Faligan with Long Beach Water. A question that was put to the panel about 10 years forward, and you were describing a vibrant situation where the water sector, water service providers are more reflective of the community it serves. So I want to put a hypothetical to you. In 10 years from now, the sophomore in college, the 19-year-old that's thinking about this vibrant sector that they want to be a part of, they're 9 years old today. So what would you say from that perspective do you think we all need to engage in, given the fact that the vibrant situation you want in the future is in the power of somebody who's 9 years old today?
I'll take that first. how many are familiar with the LA River and the soft bottom and hard bottom of the LA River? The debate has been going on for about 40 years, right, to get rid of the cement.
Right.
Well, Anatole, the Corps of Engineers were 9 years old when they started thinking about that challenge. So to your question, I think what is discussed at the dining room table with 9-year-olds today will be reality in 20 years. We're setting the table now for what the actions are going to be in 20 years from now. So if we're talking about, someone mentioned earlier, the purple pipes and capturing the stormwater, cleaning up before it gets to all the progressive topics of the day, those discussions are happening in dining room tables, at carne asadas on Saturdays, at soccer games, at churches. They're happening right now, right? So I think that's going to happen in 20 years from now.
I was going to add to the conversation, it goes to how do you imagine that change is affected? So change doesn't happen unless people demand it in most of these scenarios. If you're thinking 10 years down the line, we need to change things now to so that there's room for those young 9-year-olds to even have space to talk at the table. And I think when you're thinking about change management, and this goes back to creating that vibrant workforce, are you creating spaces that reward change, or are you creating situations where staff put themselves at risk for challenging assumptions and challenging the way things have been done in the past? So when you're thinking about what is drawing young people into these spaces now, it's a motivation to make a real tangible difference. And I think one of the big frustrations, and California and water in California specifically, is such an exciting place to be. I think there's so much change happening right now, and it's really exciting to be part of it. But you find that pace of change differs so much depending on how that change is being carried out, and how accountable to the public are those frameworks that are happening. I can think of so many different like water-related challenges that we have that are moving at different paces. You mentioned the LA River, and that's on such a longer timeline, such a longer time scale than so many of these other more flashpoint situations with wells drying and being immediately replaced. So the time scale of these things matters as well, and thinking about, well, what do we need to change now so that people are ready to come into the space when they're trained up?
Great. Scott?
And I would say just meet them where they are. We go into the schools, we make opportunities. If it's just even a one child, we've had GM for a day, where we had a 14-year-old who was autistic come and be general manager for the day. And we open these moments up because it spreads the word. Wow, what happened to so-and-so? And they did that, they offer that. I've gone into schools and been principal for a day. It's just like an open door policy. So have an open door policy, expect people to come to you, they're not gonna come to you. You have to actively seek it out. You have to go where they're at. You have to make the work interesting. So one of the things that we're doing at work, that a lot of people are coming into the gaming industry, a lot of people that we want. We don't have enough operators operating wastewater treatment plant. So one of the ideas inspired is we're doing a little short film. We're doing the real operators of Orange County, right? And showing that, not the gossipy side, but again, just something more like, and showing how people, if you're a gamer, if you're this, there's this line of work that's in there for you. Even if we have people that were bartenders that come into our work, and so just showing that connectivity and appealing to them and making it exciting and speaking to their needs, not about why I think it's a great thing to be in water because of the infrastructure that we do and the lives that we, no, but making it towards something that they are interested in and flipping the script.
Really quickly, I think, and you stole my thunder, but what I was thinking about really was it's that hands-on ability. So if it's a kid who's 8 or 9 years old, I think the education community is trying to adapt very quickly around us and trying to realize, what are the skills we're trying to teach young people to actually get them into the workforce and get them jobs. And I'm glad that the education community is finally sort of figuring this out, and we're all talking about it. So if we're talking about that pipeline from elementary up to high school to college, or maybe not college, different programs. But all this being said, back to this. So 9 or 10 years old or 8 years old, and we're in the water community, so it's the perfect time. You get these kids engaged, you get them excited. We need to have, in our case, if we didn't have staff, whatever, our staff need to be down at that school, doing presentations, doing hands-on projects. We're blessed at West Basin. We got a recycled water plant in El Segundo. We bring the kids to the plant. They get a field trip. That sparks interest. They take that information home. I know not everybody has these opportunities that same way, but back to my whole point is we also have our water harvest once a year. And one of the things that they try to do is have some sort of an interactive thing, like if we have, reptiles or whatever. I mean, these kids, they're so hands-on, and if they see it, they feel it, it's tangible, then they're going to be interested. And like June said, even if it's 1 or 2 kids or 5 kids out of maybe 30 or 40 that showed up, but that's the way you're going to get them engaged. And I think that's what's going to help us in the utility sector, both water and power, and probably, and gas. But all that being said, these are industries that people, they don't know about them firsthand. They hear about them. We get hit on a lot for all kinds of things, right? The rates are too high, or you're destroying this and that, but at the same time, it's like, well, at the same time, this is an essential service, and we need to excite people to get involved in it, and also say we are also a community service. Without us, none of this other stuff would happen, and so it's great to be a part of it, as Marissa was saying.
I think Gilberto had a question.
So my name is Gilberto. I'm an innovation engineer for enterprise automation. One of the questions I have is, as someone who's not yet in a leadership position, besides listening and being open to diverse ideas, how do you promote diversity and equality in your workplace? And for those of us who are, sorry. And for those of us who are qualified young professionals, how do we get into these leadership positions quicker?
Speak up and reach out. Speak up. Many of us been told, you're new here, don't say anything, you haven't earned your time yet. Oh, you're not young enough or old enough, you haven't been here long enough, you're not there yet. I always encourage young people, disregard all that, speak up. If you get flack for that, look for jobs somewhere else, because you can find a job somewhere else. If you find yourself comfortable, you're probably not in the right place. Always, discomfort is not a bad thing. That's why I wear heels, keeps you sharp. So I would say speak up and say to your supervisor, to those around you, say, I like to initiate a group, a committee, an innovation committee, or a diversity committee. I like to be part of that project because I really think I can learn from that. I really like to get promoted. I really would like your job, and I like to achieve that lesser time than you have. What can I do? And if they're just like, whoa, then that tells you sometimes it's time to move. The reach out part is the network part. When you're young, before you start having families and all of that, things that really take priorities in your personal life, get out there. Go to chamber event, go to this group, go to that group, go to every function you can possibly attend. Do the hustle. When you go out there and you meet people, you hear and you learn different things, you make different connections, next job, different job, because you will find those organizations that will appreciate you. Then you go there and you grow and you come back and you take over the other organization that would not let you thrive. So it's not just vertical. Don't be afraid to go to different places. I went from LA to San Bernardino County, Northern California, middle of nowhere, all over the place, to arrive to a place where I feel like I can make an impact. So it's really important to take those risks, speak up, reach out, and put yourself out there, and don't be afraid.
I would like to add, you're a student here at the college?
I actually graduated in 2020.
Okay. So I
I've
would just
actually
add,
been trying to hire him.
I would add one thing, is get a mentor. Get a mentor. Get someone who you can speak to, get advice from, because everything June said is absolutely correct. but it's also important to get a mentor. How many people know who Felicia Marcus is? Right? All in the water, right? So I was talking to Felicia last week, and she says, oh, so-and-so is my mentee. And and this individual used to work with me. And she said, he reminded me that I need to mentor young people from a conversation that you had with him. So I would ask you, young man, how many people would want to mentor him? Raise your hand. Look around this room, okay? So there's a lot of things we can't do and we should do, but many times we need somebody who's been there already to kind of help you get to where you want to go sooner. Thank you.
The feedback Jin mentioned is really, really key. Good advice. Know your value and don't be afraid to leave if it's not being recognized. I would also say there's such value in exploring the different sides of a field. So in my experience, I'm working now with a consulting group. Previously, I worked with the state, and earlier I worked for a local, like a regional planning group. So there are so many different angles here. You could work, in an elected position or supporting elected staff. You can work in the nonprofit sector. There are a lot of different angles to come at the issue, and if you're finding that you're stuck in one space, try a different space. And just amass as many different types of experiences as you can, and realize, you speak with confidence because the experience you bring is real and should have weight in the conversation.
I love you said that. Know your worth, know your value. That doesn't mean you're entitled. That's different.
Right.
Because I know people in my generation, well, they're very entitled, but that's two different things. So I love that you said that.
Yeah.
It's great.
I will just, they said all the right things, and I would say the same, that it's know what's important to you, and make sure that you are asking others around you. But you have to express that you have an interest in taking on new functions, new roles, and if you see that that's not being reciprocated, you know that this is not the place for you. And in today's world, obviously, we all know people just don't stick around anymore that long. So 3 years, 4 years, they change jobs, and employers should pay attention to that. If you're not giving them the opportunities, then you might have someone you could have groomed, you could have had a stellar star employee, and then they left. And now they're doing great things at another organization. And one note on this, I literally, last week I was on this webinar or something, and this gentleman had this great quote. It's simple, but it's strong. It said, a seat at the table is not given, it's taken. And he was talking about folks who, like all of us have been there, oh, wait your turn, you'll get your chance. And if you always listen to that, you'll never get your chance. So, whether it's yourself and others, I mean, we all know when you just got to go for it, take it. If you fail, you try. Otherwise, it might be a big win. It might be a big win for your life and your career. So that's a very important, I think, lesson for people getting out in the workforce right now.
Time for one more question over here.
Not really a question, a comment. Hi, my name is Alma, and I just want to publicly recognize Victor because he was a big mentor to me when I was executive director at WOW. So thank you, Victor, because I know he's been a mentor not only to folks like myself, but throughout the state of California, and really to young Latino men to help them understand policy, water policy throughout the state. And if you don't want to stay in water, I work with Stephanie Graves, who's with the Leanders group, and we do quite a bit of mentorship there. And it's I'm project managing statewide initiatives now. So I really want to applaud her efforts because we really do talk about and walk the diversity, equity, inclusion in the workforce. So just wanted to give a shameless promotion to our organization.
See, you save that because that's a preview of our event in October, right? We have this big networking event called YSYU, and it's just like this. We're going to say this is why you should think about water or whatever sector that deals with water, and this is why we want you. I love this. When we fight over talent, that's what we should do. And you can have more than one mentor. And we should not be afraid to impose ourselves as mentors, even if no one asks us. No, because it's true. And sometimes I talk about meet people where they're at. Gilberto never asked me to be a mentor, and I just took it anyway because I'm like, there's talent. Melissa never asked me over there. She's not even graduated from high school. And I'm like, come to Water UCI with you, Dad. And then let's get you into UCI because UCI gets it. And then maybe after you graduate, you stay in Orange County, you can come work for me. Whether I'm dead or not, it doesn't matter. It's just like get you into the industry. Same thing with Amber. I don't even know what she wants to do, but she wants to, she's got all these great talent. And she loves golf. That's okay. We'll get you in water. Maybe if we get you in water. And I don't even ask people. Voluntold, my staff knows this. I'm like, get involved in water UCI. That's how I just pull people in. Like, this is great. That's kind of what we have to do as the older generation. We have to reach back and literally pull them. And sometimes they come to you like Lauren did, and she's doing fantastic. But all these people I named off there, they either are part of Water UCI, or unbeknownst to them, they are going to be part of Water UCI. So I'm just saying.
I know we're pressed for time. Can I just really quickly add? There are so many employers in the room. I think when we're thinking about training young people into the profession, it needs to be pointed out that unpaid internships aren't appropriate, especially if your goal is to increase diversity and equity in your hiring practices. You can't expect that people will be able to offer their free labor. That's all.
Well, thank you.
Question, this gentleman right here.
Take my seat at the table. Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for your candor. Thank you for the diverse conversations. I know you're sincere in your efforts for diversity, and I'd like to know where the rubber hits the road for you. What is your one big challenge, and how can we help you in that?
I'll start on this end. The big challenge is the fear of change and ego, and right now still the upper top management in these organizations, they talk about it, but they're not doing enough about it. And what I would put forth to elected officials who hire the head of your organization, take a look at how you're hiring. The same flyer, same recruiting firm, X amount of years of experience, these degrees preferred, blah, blah, blah. You can take 10 different flyers and see the same thing. But is that what creates a culture? Is that what creates a safe environment? We're very proud that we have a top workplace in Orange County and in USA. But what are the skill sets that we should look for? Is it just about tenure? Because then you're just saying that young people can't be general managers and or CEOs. So I would invite anyone who's hiring to revisit that because it's always been in that place. Because until people in my position take up diversity, equity, inclusion as a priority, even as an elected official, you're gonna find resistance. And I've seen that in my career. Before Black Lives Matter, before the social unrest, before just 3 years ago, I would sit in rooms and talk about diversity, eyes rolling. I'd be ostracized for bringing it up. That has nothing to do with what we do. We provide water. We have the momentum, but now we need the people in those leadership positions to push the ball forward so that as an organization, you can be successful. So to me, that is one big sort of an accountability measure that we can do. And a takeaway is to really look at who we're hiring.
That's a tough question, but I would say I think one of our biggest hurdles just in general, well, what we don't want to do is fall into the trap where we think we've done enough. That's probably what I would fear, right? Okay, we've had the conversation, we've set a policy, maybe some organizations even hire, a DEI position, and we check certain boxes, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, what does that all mean? And I think that is the big question for all of us, because right now, everybody's jumping on that whole bandwagon, and that's a little bit fearful to me, because it's too bad certain circumstances led us to that point, but so be it. At least we're here. We understand that this is a big deal for our region, our country. And of course, sadly, every state's going to look at it differently. Every jurisdiction, if you will, is going to look at it differently. And some people, like June said, they literally roll their eyes. They don't really care, and that's too bad. It's very sad. And that's why people kind of want to come out here. They want to move out here. They want to move to other urban areas where they're going to feel accepted and where they know the organizations appreciate them. So I guess first and foremost, we have to keep doing what we're doing, but make sure that we're not just doing it to fulfill some goal and check the boxes and not really live it. And I would say, because, and most of you, I'm sure, parents, and it really doesn't even matter, each of our own ethnicity. At the end of the day, you want the best for your kids. You want your kids to, grow up and be accepted for who they are and whatever they end up wanting to do, and not be ostracized in any way, shape, or form. That's the goal of this country we live in. So I wouldn't want to fall into that trap or that hurdle that we feel like we've done enough. Hopefully we won't even have to have these type of conversations someday. I mean, that's really idealistic, but ultimately it should just be inherent. It's inherent in who we are as a people, and that would reflect in our workforce.
Well, I would say two things. One, leadership matters. To June's point, if you have an elected body, then that body's got to be, interested in diversity, interested in making sure that all voices are heard and all voices are at the table. So I think that's number one, that leadership matters at the elected position and as well as the general managers or CEO positions. The second thing is I was fortunate enough to work with Cesar Chavez, the founder of the United Farm Workers Union, and he said, you don't lose if you don't give up. So if this is a goal for personally or professionally, you just don't give up. You keep doing it every day. You keep talking about it. You keep acting on it. And you make sure that you surround yourself with people who want to do the same thing you do. So it makes it easier instead of trying to do it by yourself.
It's a great question. We don't have time to talk about all the obstacles there are, but I think one of the biggest obstacles is the minimal requirement is often not what is actually fair or just. And so when everything is, you need to consider the incentive structures that build the systems that we have in place right now. And if organizations and agencies aren't incentivized to increase diversity, equity, and engagement in their work, that work isn't really going to be done. Or if it is going to be done, it's going to be done differently in different spaces, which is fine. But it's one of the biggest challenges, I would say, is rising to meet that gap. And there's, again, too much to say about it, and we're short on time. But I really value the question and the conversation.
Well, the good news is when we retire to the reception, and our panelists will be there, and we hope all of you can join us, you'll have an opportunity to continue the discussion, so please do that. Before I thank our panelists, I want to recognize Danielle. Danielle, if you could just stand. Danielle did a project for us this past year on workforce development in water, conducted a survey, and I think you're also, I know your poster's on display, and did you want to say a little bit about that? Get a mic over there, please.
Getting my workout today.
That's right.
It's a good workout.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone. It was just really informative to do the survey. And so I got to survey some of the students here at UCI. And we had about 58 respondents, and we just questioned their workforce preferences, and so things that they would like to see in the places that they work at. And so, well, a lot of the information that we got was just students prioritize their interest in the field. And so what they want to know is what the water sector has to offer. Yeah, thank you. What the water sector has to offer. And so I think that's just a great area of improvement. And I want to say thank you for allowing me to speak to everyone. And I look forward to talking with more of you in the end.
Thank you, and I think you're all going to look forward to really seeing this poster. It's a terrific job. This has been an extraordinary session, wonderful panel, great answers to the questions, great discussion. Let's give our panelists a great hand.
Great moderator.
And let's retire to some liquid refreshment. Great job.
Thank you.
All right.
Great.
Thank
This
you.
was great.
Thank you.
Couldn't have been better.